Hi, I'm Hazel. It's almost Saturday, which makes it time to sit down and catch up on the WoW news of the week, what I've been up to, and answer some of your questions. This week, the Shadowlands Alpha did officially start, and good news for me, I am in. What we currently have to look at are the initial class changes, the level 1 through 10 Exile's Reach experience for the Alliance, the Bastion Shadowlands leveling zone, and that is it for now for playable content in the Alpha. However, fan sites have been data mining from the available build and found lots more things to look at that just haven't been put into the game just yet. Today, I want to cover the most exciting things that I've seen so far, as well as a couple of answers to questions that we've had ever since BlizzCon. So the first thing that we now know that people have been asking me and I've been asking the universe since BlizzCon is what level does stuff happen with the new leveling squish? So to quickly recap, max level is going to be 60 in Shadowlands. Your current 120s will be squished down to 50, but there were lots of questions left open about things like what level do various races and classes start at, and when do you get flying? And we now know, or at least we know the first version. Things could change, but this seems like a pretty straightforward thing. So, the new starting zones are, as I mentioned, level 1 through 10. Demon Hunters and Death Knights will start at level 8, and by the time they exit their starting experiences, they will be level 10. Allied races start at level 10, so if you make an allied race Death Knight, that will start at level 10, not 8. Your first ground mount is going to be at level 10. You will get your faster ground mount at level 17. You will access the first level of flying at level 25, which is smack dab in the middle of the leveling experience, 1 through 50, because remember 50 to 60 is Shadowlands levels, that's endgame leveling. So halfway through the basic leveling experience, you're going to get your basic flying, you will get faster flying, 280% comes at level 27, and then 310% flying comes at level 30. The training costs have not changed so far, so you're still looking for like 237 gold for basic flying and like 42 something for the 2 better levels of flying. So to me, this makes sense for like 8 of the potential 7 expansions that you could level through in order to level. Remember that the intent is that you can level 1 through 50 in just 1 expansion's worth of content if you choose to do so. You should be able to do the whole thing within 1 X-Pack's leveling content. So 7 of the 8 expansions had leveling on ground at least at first, and then released flying later. The notable exception is Cataclysm, which is actually the one I was looking forward to. Like, when Cataclysm leveling came out, it was right when they had given flying to the old world, and the Cata leveling zones were set in the old world. So Hyjal, you were able to fly through. Vashir, obviously, was a whole swimming thing. So I guess the answer, and I haven't tested this personally, I guess that I would just pick a different area to level in up to 25 and then go to Hydro or Cataclysm zones if you want to. You don't have to, but if you wanted to level in those zones, you probably want to wait until you get your flying, because I can't imagine questing in Mount Hydro without it. I'm sure it's possible. It sounds gross. I suppose in Vashiri they give you the seahorse down there anyways, so maybe that's fine. It would be a real plot twist if Vashir turned out to be the most efficient leveling zone after these changes. I don't think that's true, but wouldn't that be something? Segueing to the most interesting piece of combat-related information and philosophy we got this week, they talked a little bit about target capping. So in Shadowlands, many abilities that used to be AOE will now do damage up to a certain number of targets, and some of them will do damage up to that certain number of targets and then drop off damage after that, much like current Twilight Devastation works. And they talked a little bit in a blue post about their reasoning behind that. They talked about wanting to carve out different niches so they can sort of differentiate between cleave and AOE. They also kind of laid out a vision of a future where mass pulling and AoEing things down is not the best answer all the time, because right now in a lot of situations that's your 100% best strategy all of the time. That all sounds good to me on paper. I'm sure there's going to be some application where this is really frustrating to me, but I don't know that any of it's happening to my classes specifically, so maybe I'm a little too far from the issue. Another thing that we got a closer look at this week was some more customization, certainly not all of it. Greater player customization is a huge theme in Shadowlands. It was one of their big selling points at BlizzCon, and most of what they showed us at BlizzCon, like the boneless undead and whatnot, most of that is not yet on the alpha or indeed even being data mined yet, but there are still some things to look at. First thing I noticed actually when I logged onto the alpha is that there are 2 new gnome hairstyles that you can use when creating a gnome character in Shadowlands. I will throw them onto the screen. Apparently, people were telling me these models aren't brand new. They've been around in the files for a while, but they're just now being available to players. I didn't spot any other ones floating around, but that doesn't mean that they're not there. Data miners have uncovered some new customization options for some of the more recent races. We have some stripy pandas in the files. We have some stripy worgen in the files. Blood elves notably got some darker skinned options, as well as blue eyes. Eye color, I think, is going to be an option for most races. We also saw purple eyes for humans in this patch, but the blue-eyed blood elf thing is inflammatory for its own reasons. That essentially is basically what high elves would be, and I think people are upset that they're still part of blood elves and not going to be available to the Alliance. I see where the frustration comes from. I don't really think there was a world in which they were going to give Alliance another Blood Elf clone after Void Elves that just has blue eyes. It didn't feel very likely to me. I think that this is probably best case scenario for people that want to roleplay Blood Elves, is either just play a Horde one and pretend, or play a Horde one and then cross your fingers for the wish list future. Mind you, not something that's happening, but you know, maybe one day in WoW, they won't dissolve the factions, but maybe they'll let you take your character and choose your faction. Not a thing that's coming, not a Shadowlands feature, just a wishlisted item of mine, but if that happened, then you can have your Alliance Blood Elves, so you know, there's always hope. Does that count? I don't know if that counts as hope. Speaking of fresh models, we've gotten a look at some of the first Shadowlands mounts in the alpha, as well as some transmog sets for various covenants. I'm just going to cycle through a couple of my favorite ones on the screen here because there's some really gorgeous stuff in there. I'll do a whole video taking a closer look at the mount specifically, but wow, some of these armor sets. Those were my big takeaways from the first day of alpha. I'm sure there will be plenty more, so keep an eye on my channel as well as my Twitter for updates as we uncover them. I'm also going to be streaming it, I assume, a fair bit. Questions from this week. Ivashkov asks, if Blizzard gave druids an additional animal form, what would you like to see added and why? So I thought about it, and the only role that does not currently have an animal form tied to it for druids is Resto Druid. There's, like, we used to have Tree form, and that's no longer, like, there's the cooldown, but it's not really the same thing that it used to be back in, like, Wrath or whatever. So I would say tree forms, but, you know, more of them, you know? Make them, they don't have to be the old tree. You can have all kinds of trees. If I could heal as some kind of walking, talking cherry blossom tree in WoW, I know that sounds ridiculous, but there's a lot of silly things in this game. I would be pretty down. So, you know, get some bushes in there. Get some, you know, deciduous trees, coniferous trees. There's lots of tree directions you can go. Beyond that, also, I would just like to see more skins for existing druid forms that aren't necessarily the same animal. I feel like they tore off that band-aid of having bears always be the tanks and cats always be the DPS. I feel like that really went out the window with Zanmalari druids. So you may as well just, I mean, I just really want, like, rabbit travel forms, and, you know, it would be so cool if you could tank as, like, a turtle, or you could do, you know, feral DPS as a hyena. I think there's a lot of unexplored options. You don't have to go crazy far and turn them into hunters, except you are the pet, but I think you could go a little farther. Margot asks, how do you separate your work from your personal life? I've been working from home for over a month now, like many others I'm sure, and I sometimes have a hard time separating both. The honest answer is that it is really hard and I'm not good at it, and I've had lots of practice and I'm still not really much better at it than I was when I started, to be honest. However, things that do help me and that I notice I'm worse if I don't do them. I keep a separate space, and these are all advice you can read all over the internet, but I do keep a separate space, and I do find that's important, so that if I am at this desk, it is just like a work thing, a YouTube, Twitch work thing. I know it's like work, but still. And then the rest of the apartment is for the other stuff. And setting up the separate spaces is one thing, but actually adhering to them is another. I found that it only really works if I'm really strict with myself. And like, if I'm going to do something else, I gotta get up and go do it somewhere else. Otherwise the whole thing just comes crashing down. So separate spaces. I do get dressed every day. I'm not getting dressed into particularly painful clothes. The things that I wear probably could be pajamas, but I don't sleep in them, and that makes them not pajamas. So I do get dressed every morning, and then beyond that, I think the routine and like the hours, if at all possible, is really important. I have very specific hours where I am doing XYZ, which is, you know, work color during these hours, and then, you know, home stuff during other hours. It's easy and sometimes very convenient to be able to kind of like be doing chores in little gaps between when you're working, but for the most part, I try to avoid that because it's too easy for me to get derailed, like folding laundry and doing dishes, and like you're feeling productive, but then you realize you didn't get enough done. That might be just me. And then to that end, or vaguely related tip, if I'm going to take breaks, I set timers. And if I'm going to be working, I also set timers. I set timers for everything. So to make sure that I don't zone out for too long and keep doing the same thing be outside of the schedule. So if I'm taking a lunch break, I will set that timer on my phone so that an alarm goes off at the end of it. So no matter what I'm doing, that's a sign to get back to work. And the same thing, if I'm going to sit down and edit for X amount of time, I set that timer. And then at the end of it, I make sure I get up and get a drink or make some tea or go look out a window or whatever. Not new advice, but that is what I do. And Razorclaw asks, gonna paraphrase a little bit here, do you think that for battle pets, the charms and bandages will be gone or keep going? And how many bandages do you think is good going into Shadowlands with? I will have 4,052 stocked up as of now. So I think you're set. I think you're good for bandages. I also find that I accumulate them and I don't really spend them very much just because you can heal your pets for free on a cooldown, so I usually just do that. You're good on bandages. I would anticipate that in Shadowlands, polished pet charms will be for new Shadowlands content, and then BFA pet content will give shiny charms. I anticipate they're going to do that little switcheroo again. They haven't done it on Alpha yet. Currently on Alpha, BFA content still gives polished pet charms, but I'm sure that's just because it's early. So the correct answer is probably going to be spend your current pet charms on battle training stones and the like before BFA ends. We don't know that yet, and I'll let you know when we know something, but that is almost certainly going to be the case again. I know I'm going to be buying and stocking up on the ultimate battle training stones so that I can instantly level some of the new Shadowlands pets when I start getting them. And that has been my week. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments of the most recent one. My question for you is, what are you most interested to see out of the alpha? I'm going to be doing my best to cover a variety of different topics, but still always good to know what people are specifically looking for, especially if you think it's something that other people might not get to. I am totally down to chase down weird, oddly specific answers, so lay your questions in the comments. No promises, but I'll do my best. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.